I recently got into woodworking, and like a lot of new woodworkers, I do not have a thickness planer. But in this video, I'll show you how I built a router sled for only 20 bucks that lets me plane boards. I'll show you how I turned this into this. The first thing you will need, obviously, is the router sled. This is one I made for about 20 bucks using plywood I got from the Habitat for Humanity store. You can see here it was already finished, which has been beneficial in this case because it helps prevent the glue from sticking to the wood as much. There are definitely still some spots where it's stuck and pulled up some of the material, but this has worked well. Something like a melamine shelf board or workbench surface would be even better because the glue really would not want to stick to that. After you pick your material, you need to decide how large you want to make the sled. Mine is about 10 inches wide. I actually wish it was a little bit wider, but this has been okay. And the sides are 2 3/4 inches tall. Obviously, I just made the sides by ripping the board, then gluing them and screwing them right here. This has been a pretty good depth. There are occasionally times I get rough cut lumber that's 3 inches thick, so I can't do that in this. But it works really well for most things. And actually, if you get something really thin, sometimes it is kind of hard to reach it with the router bit. And that is where this extra piece comes into play. So if I have something that's pretty thin that I still need to plane, you put this in here, clamp it down, and then you effectively raised the floor of this so a thinner material will still fit in here and you can reach it with the router. Then you have to make the jig that actually holds the router. This will depend on what type of router you have. I have this Bosch Palm router, so I got this angle aluminum from the local big box store, used some scraps of wood here just to make the ends, and that way it fits over the sled. And you need to make it whatever size will fit the base of your router. So there you go, this fits in here now, and the basic way this works is once the board is level and secured down, you make a cut, move a little bit, make another overlapping cut, move a little bit, make another cut, and just go all the way down the board. I forgot to mention this before, so I'm dropping it in now. Make sure to use paste wax on the rails and all these contact points. It just helps everything slide a lot better. This is a piece of salvaged barn oak with a big old hump in the middle. So I can put it this way and it's pretty secure. I will have to cut off all the middle there, or I can put it this way. You can see it rocks quite a bit. This would still work. I can put some shims under the edges, glue that, and it will stay in place just fine. But to make it a little simpler, I'm probably just gonna do it this way. Since it's nice and stable, I might need a little bit of a shim under that far end, and then I'll use a little bit of hot glue. I put a shim under one corner of the board and now it is very stable. The next step is to use a little bit of hot glue on the ends of the board and on the shim just to hold everything in place. Now I'll let that harden up while I'm getting everything else ready. Now it's time to actually do the cutting, and I have a 3/4 inch wide mortising bit. That's just because that's what I could find locally. You can also get wider surfacing bits. I actually have on order a 1 inch wide surfacing bit, but you have to think about what your router can run. This is a pretty small 1 horsepower router, so I can't put a big like 2 inch wide surfacing bit on this because the router simply is not powerful enough. I hope all of you already know this, but when you're using a power tool like this, you need protective equipment. So I have hearing protection, eye protection, and a high quality dust mask. Now to actually start cutting, and think about the highest spots on your board. On this one, it's crowned in the middle, so I know the middle is the highest spot. I have the depth of the router bit adjusted so that it will just be making a light cut on the highest spots. So I'll do a pass and just start cutting off the high spots. I just finished the first pass and we can see, obviously I was right, the middle was the high spot, so it only cut there. This whole process now is just going to be lowering the bit a little bit and making a slightly deeper cut, and just keep doing that over the board until eventually you have cut all of it flat. On your last pass, you may have a few of these dark spots left that haven't been cut. Then on your last pass, you will cut all those and the entire board will be clean and cut flat. The second pass is done, and as we can see, a larger area was cut. Now I'll lower the bit a little bit more, cut more, and keep going until the entire board is flat. You can see more than half the board was cut on that pass, so probably 2 or 3 more and this side of the board should be good. I did another 1 or 2 passes and now you can see something like 90% of the board has been cut. There are just these little areas at the edge. So I think 1 more pass will do it. I'm going to make sure it's nice and light and that I'm moving the router very consistently and evenly with overlapping cuts, because that'll give me the best finish. I just finished the last pass, and as you can see, the entire board has been cut, except for a little spot down here, but I'll be cutting that off anyway, so that doesn't matter. You may be able to see some light lines from side to side on the board from the cutting action of the router, but those, you can barely feel those. They're mostly just something you can see, and my experience has been you do the normal sanding you would do with a random orbit sander, and it'll take all that off. It'll look nice and smooth. You can see this does make a lot of sawdust. It's now the next day. I took this board and hit it with 120 grit on my random orbit sander, and I hope you can see there just how nice and smooth and flat this looks. But it does take a good bit of time. I spent 50 minutes planing the side of this board, but that included stopping all the time to shoot this video. So if I had just been working start to finish, I think it would have taken me between 20 and 30 minutes. Really, a way to speed this up would be to get a better bit. I was using this small router with only this 3/4 inch mortising bit because that's what I could get locally. I have some larger surfacing bits on order, and really if you're going to do that, just go right ahead and get some larger bits. I'll put some links down below, because with those larger surfacing bits, you can cut a significantly wider path with each stroke, and that'll allow you to resurface the board a lot quicker. So you might be thinking, well, what do you do now that you have just one side of the board planed? There are a couple different ways to approach this. The simplest but most time-consuming way is you just take the board in the sled and you flip it over, then you plane this side. I, however, do it a little differently. Now that I have this nice flat edge, I use my circular saw and a straight edge to get a nice square and straight edge cut on one edge of the board. Then you can see my table saw behind me. I use that fresh edge against the fence of the table saw and just make the rest of the cuts on the table saw. But there are a lot of videos on processing wood once you have it planed, so go check some of those out. Really, the hardest part is getting it planed in the first place. So what do you guys think? Is there anything you would do differently when making a router sled? Let me know in the comments down below, and thanks for watching.